Hello. Hi. Today's video is a little bit more about the goddess. The other day I mentioned a book that I get a lot of information from that I also got from watching another priestess on YouTube, Encyclopedia of Spirits. Okay. And then another book that I've mentioned, is it out here? Oh, for goodness sakes, it's not out here. I thought it was. All right, well, I guess it's a Bible day. It'll be a Bible day. I was going to share a little bit about the Mommy Watsa Sibyl book. Through that book, she speaks about the Sibylias and the prophetesses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the word messenger, the word prophet, the word Messiah, they all mean the same thing. They mean a messenger. And that's what it meant. Okay. And there are different ways to describe a messenger. A lot of people use birds, all different kind of birds as messengers. All birds are considered messengers. And then each bird would be linked to either a different deity or to a different element, depending on their color, where they're at, like a raven and a crow, and an eagle and a hawk, right? Or an owl, right? Or an ibis when it comes in relation to Thoth. So the story is, so I'm gonna take you down like if you were reading a book, so to speak, and you're reading the book and you realize that there was a part before the book was written. Okay, so the part before the book was written is that there was oral. It was oral. Of course, we did write a lot of things. There was a lot of writing. There was writing, obviously, because we have proof of that. Okay. The writing has been shifted, but in truth, the writing came from the mother, because the mother is first. The mother is first, right? So the messages, and we have hints of this in the writings, such as what I call the Sibyl instead of the Bible, of the doves. And actually, the first bird released, I think, was a raven. So these are little hints as to what I consider the truth, which is the female or the goddess aspect of religions. And that's what prophetess, Messiah, or messenger were, these people who brought messages, you know. The words shifted throughout the years to turn into like witch or wizard or magician, which still apply and can be practiced. But there's also those who intuitively are drawn to trees, intuitively are drawn to the ocean, intuitively can see auras or feel or dream the future. And these were those type of beings. For some reason, I'm bringing up the book, The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, because in there he speaks about the women, the medicinal women, and the genocide that happened upon them, and mentions that the proof that he had found, he believes to add, instead of 50,000 women gathered and burned all at once, it was more like 500,000. And this is mostly what the Crusades were. So I'm mentioning the prophetesses and such because one of the things that I'd been thinking about, and I think is, I don't know, pertinent, it's a good word, is where whitewashing came in. Whitewashing and the theft of the indigenous prophetesses. Okay. I'm going to start with Africa. And link it to the whole world, because it is across the board, across the whole world. I don't care what your skin color is now. If you go to the bones and the beginnings of in these lands where people were, the beginning peoples were, at least had features of what we now say are people of color. Right? The full nose, the full lips, the curly hair, okay? And proof that the Egyptians and the Sumerians were of color, and even the Greeks were of color, right? There's so much proof of this. So when did it switch? So I started this as speaking about the Sibyls. One of the, and in the Bible, it talks about, in the Sibyl, there is a part where it speaks that all things have God's name, because God is perfect, okay? If we really dive into the names of things, they're named after female goddesses. Okay? It's very, very interesting and somewhat tricky. Female prophetesses as well, right? The alphabet and all these things from the females. Okay. So, one of the prophetesses, one of the Sibyllia's names was Albania. I don't have proof of this, but I believe that this is where the name albino came from. I believe that she was one of the last known royal, besides Hawaii and like Fiji and places that still exist today, where they do have, and even in Africa, where they have prominent female Sibyls, whereas in Hawaii she was actually a queen until that was changed, okay? And that land was a kingdom. It still is a kingdom. Okay, so ruled by a woman, just saying. Okay, so this Sibyl, who was white to look at because she was an albino, which is where the name even came from, was royalty. And it was the first time that the white race was able to relate to somebody of royalty. They looked like them. And so I believe through the Europe, Roman, and a link to parts of Africa, which will come in later videos, because everything comes from the indigenous. You know, this is something everyone's figuring out. All the information, all the writings, and all that stuff comes from the indigenous. What a lot is being left out is it comes from the indigenous mothers, females, okay? So she would have been the first royalty that the commoners or people of light skin could relate to or emulate. And this is where you would see in the royal houses the big wigs, the clothing of the tight dresses with the big breasts and the extended tabletop bottom. I've heard, and I do have a theory, that this is where the whitewashing actually began, because it was a way to solidify power for people who look light that hadn't. And I believe that that's what lepers or leprosy was considered in the Sibyl. I believe that this is where the shift happened. Somewhere in both races, the idea of royalty was already established. Something to look up to and something to be like. And if the stories or the truth is retold to okay, I got a phone call. If the story and the truth is retold by all peoples of royalty, that this is what royalty looks like. And it's backed with money and writings, okay? So the big switch happens when you can take a book and change the name and put your own name on it and claim that it is the truth of the truth of the truth, right? Who knows? It's writing. I could write something. The earth is flat. I was born yesterday. Oh my God. I don't know. You know, I could write anything. People can write all kinds of things. It doesn't solidify things. What solidifies things is us giving those things authority, right? So when we give authority to royalty, and royalty then gives authority to scientists or doctors, so to speak, because it is through royalty that schools are established, religion is established, and social and cultural norms are established. Languages, right? So you see this whole influence through royalty. And if royalty looks white and they hide the black, which I think is going to come out, or the dark skin, the African, the indigenous, the truth, because why is it that we discover that Rome and other places actually worship the Black Madonna in hiding, but everyone else worships a white male? And even Mary has been portrayed as, you know, white, the Virgin Mother, which is a unique way of like worshiping the mother, but not exactly speaking the truth. Worshiping the mother in a patriarchal way, right? It's, you know, it's interesting to me that there's so many of us that have been so devoted to religion that has damned women to slither beneath everything else on earth. Why would God do that to their creation? Which reminds me, women have one less rib so they can have children, right? Not always, but oftentimes women have one less rib so that their ribs can adjust and move to carry a baby to full term. So wouldn't it be that the female gave up a rib to have children? In the dynamic, I think a lot of that stuff is metaphorical as well as esoteric, right? Okay, that's where I think the division happened, because we can't have the lighter skin without the dark in the first place. I know that there are people who believe that there are aliens here that are from other planets that are specifically like where Aryan comes from, and I've been getting hints that Aryan comes from a place where they say the first human was found, and that's kind of where the name came from, and then it's also been manipulated. And I just think as long as there is a perpetuated betterness or something to look up to that we give authority to, then it will always work. And there will always be some racial separation. And I'm not saying that there's a difference in cultures, because there is. And traditions. There is, absolutely. So what is it about this organ that keeps anybody? I mean, if you're here on this planet, the planet's allowing you to be here, I guess. You know, I don't know. That may not be true. And if galactic beings show up, you know, they might give us some more information. But I think that if anything exists, it has permission to exist on some level, right? And that it's all a lesson, that we're here to learn something. And being someone who's mixed, there's nowhere to fit in, because the way that I think and the way that I see things, and I think other people who are multicultural don't subscribe to a certain side and have trouble subscribing to any particular religion, because honestly they don't really include people of different, specifically women, and people of different I would say cultural stigmas, I guess is the best way to say it. All right, so I'm doing a little decoding of the Bible with, I don't know, with something. Let's see, where have I decoded? Let's just go somewhere like David counts the fighting men. Let's check this out. This is Samuel 23:27. I don't really know this part. Okay. I'm gonna turn the, oh, I can't turn the camera around. Okay. One of the things I've started doing is looking at the Hebrew part. I'd really like to learn Hebrew. I think that's important. And I think it's important. Oh, interesting. Eliphalant. That sounds a lot like one of the goddess names I just read the other day. See, I think they change everything in the Bible. This is very confusing. Okay, so I've been looking at the Hebrew parts. How much time do I have? Because it's very interesting. Hebrew, I think it's like Chinese, where the letters, the lettering can represent, I might be wrong about this with Chinese. Okay, but from what I understand with Hebrew, each alph, beta, each letter is a sound, a symbol, and represents either male or female, and sometimes both. So if we're translating the Old Testament into the new Bible, Sibyl, is it possible that we don't really know if they were male or female because of that? Because of that?